All right. Yeah. Thanks again.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Wait a minute, but you have a book? You have a YouTube page that?
Yeah, so I have my travel YouTube channel up, but I don't do that anymore because my coaching work takes a lot of my time.
Okay.
So, but if you want to have more information on traveling to Peru for when, coronavirus is over and we can travel again, you
Right.
can find me on YouTube as Steph Peru Travel Tips. That's how you can find me there. And if you're interested in personal development and coaching and, entrepreneurship, spirituality, those kinds of things, you can find me on YouTube as Stef Ventura Coaching. And that's where you can access teachings that I have on YouTube, and you can find the links to my social media for my coaching work as well. Stef Ventura Coaching on Instagram, on Facebook, and that's where you can stay in touch with me if that resonates with you. So that's what I have.
I'll add the links and all of that stuff, all that good stuff below, and I'll do that YouTube-y stuff. Like, subscribe, do hit the bell,
Do things.
do all of that stuff, and
Share your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of the story,
yeah.
or if you have any crazy stories you want to share.
All right. Stef Ventura curates a YouTube page where she shares information about her country, Peru. Her videos are exciting and informative. I used her videos to learn all about Peru, and I suggest anyone do the same. Now, this project is Amazing Stories, and I'm your host, Larry Wiggs. I also like to be called Larry Legend, and I will do my best to live up to that moniker. Well, let's travel to Peru to talk to Stef Ventura and hear her story. Hola, bienvenidos a Stef Ventura, a El Rincón del Mundo de Larry.
Muchas gracias.
Okay. Well, here's what I recall. When I went to Peru for the first time in 2015, I searched for information on Peru. And okay. I found Stef Ventura's webpage or YouTube site. And I found it extremely resourceful, informative, useful. And I said, cool, I'm now set to travel to Peru, thanks to Stef Ventura. And I had the opportunity, I believe, to go, yes, this was 2017 when I returned to Peru. And I contacted Steph, and she was liberal with her time. She was gracious enough to meet me at a nice vegan cafe where she introduced me to vegan food. And we took a journey to the Afro-Peruvian city of Chincha, where, we visited a hacienda. And yeah, and it was nice being back in Peru, but it was even nicer having a friend, someone to hold my hand and say, don't worry, you can travel far and wide in my country, and you're going to be fine. And that's exactly what Stef Ventura provided. So I was very happy with that. So Stef Ventura is
good to hear that. Well, I just think it's so funny because you just said, like, I was there to hold your hand and help you feel like, okay, you're good, nothing's going to happen to you, you can travel. But then on the day that we decided to travel together to Chincha, like, I arrived late because, Latinos, by a few minutes, and I missed the bus that we were supposed to take to the south. And then I had to wait to get the bus. And then I don't think you had a cell phone, or I didn't have a cell phone, or we had no way of communicating with one another. We just knew, like, where we were trying to go to. But you were further ahead of me, and I had no clue how to get to where you were going, and I didn't have a phone or something to try to figure my way out. And, luckily I speak Spanish. So long story short, I somehow managed to take the right bus to the place and get off at the right place and arrive. And then I finally arrived at the hacienda where you were. Yeah. That's where we finally, caught up. And it's interesting because I was supposed to hold your hand, but then I just kind of, arrived late and I let you go off on your own and you figured it out somehow.
Yeah.
And you did it. You didn't die. So yay.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And yeah, but we did leave the hacienda together.
Yes. Yeah. We didn't lose each other anymore after that.
Right.
But yeah. So that was really fun.
Yeah. And then while we were okay, so the I guess Carmen region where Chincha is located still has plantations or cotton fields
Yeah.
that are worked today. And as we were leaving Chincha, I had to ask the taxi driver to stop so I could actually pick some cotton, which I
Yeah.
was a very interesting experience. And although I've been to the South, to southern states in America, I don't recall ever being to a cotton farm or seeing cotton, um, you know,
On
growing.
field. Yeah.
Yeah, naturally. So I grabbed the cotton, and yeah, I believe I have it. I have to find it. I wish I.
I had it for a really long time too. And I don't know, I eventually threw it away.
Yeah. But it's a natural fiber, so there's no reason to throw it away. It's always good, right? You can.
I wasn't going to do anything with it. And I try to be minimalist. So I try not to have unnecessary things. But yeah, that was fun. That was a really fun experience.
All right. Is that our amazing
So,
story? It's finished. We're done. Amazing.
cool. So I have lots of amazing stories to share. They come from a very spiritual background because I'm a psychic soul alignment coach, and my world is really very much about spirituality and speaking to spirit guides and that kind of thing, and working with the universe. And so last year I became location independent and I started traveling more. My home base is in Peru, but I go to other countries for a while and then I come back here. And even just in the last few years of traveling, before I became location dependent, but I was on the spiritual journey. I've had lots of crazy stories of things that have happened to me that as a result of being on the spiritual journey, and have just really opened my eyes to the fact that everything is always working out, and God, the universe, the greater power is always looking after all of us. And if we could just learn to not freak out and to just trust, things on our path would go a lot more smoothly, because when we travel, things aren't always going to go according to the plan. There's always going to be complications. Like with us, when we first, went to travel together, we got lost. But if, we just trusted the process, it would eventually work it out so that we could find each other again and have the trip, and enjoy the rest of the day together. And that's really, I think, what I've learned a lot about life in general and traveling, especially, is like, there's going to be, delays and setbacks and complications and whatever. But if you're just able to trust and let go, like, it's going to work out. And that's been my biggest takeaway from my experiences. So something that I want to share today, from my many journeys and stories, is back in 2018, I decided to sign up to go to a spiritual retreat that I felt pulled to go to for my spiritual development, my business development, all these different things. So I paid thousands of dollars to go. I paid, $1,600 to take a flight over there. And long story short, I had to, take my flight the evening of a certain day. I think it was like August 1st or something like that. I had to take my flight that evening, and I had a cat at the time. But I had to go drop her off at my father's, who lives like in the north of Lima here in Peru. And because of the distances and because of traffic, it just takes like almost 2.5, 3 hours to get to his house. So from where I lived. So I had to go drop her off, and I thought, like, I have plenty of time to get all my things, together and drop my cat off before I go take this flight in the evening. So I went about my day. I had a client call, got my cat ready. I left at like 11 in the morning, went to my dad's, and somehow, with just going to go drop her off and coming back, somehow I got home at like almost 5 o'clock, because it just took that long to get back home. And I had very little time before I had to take this flight at like 8 o'clock. And I had to still get my clothes like packed and get out of there, and make sure that I, left in advance enough from where I was at to like take a taxi or something back to the airport because it's not that close, depending on traffic. So anyway, I took a I took a taxi, and I think I took it like around 6 o'clock. And in the past, when I had traveled, I would usually get to the airport in like 45 minutes at the most, maybe an hour at the most. So I thought, okay, cool. It's 6 o'clock. I will get there at 7 at the latest. I can still make this flight, still get there, you know? But I had never really traveled at night. And I realized then that I made a very big mistake because I didn't account for nighttime traffic. And nighttime traffic is really bad. And so it took like 2 hours to get from where I was at to the airport, which normally takes about 30 minutes, 35 minutes or so. But it took 2 hours because the traffic was just so bad. And I get to the airport, I can't, you know, check in anymore because they're like, no, you're too late, and sorry, this and that. And I had like basically lost $4,000 if I didn't get to get on a flight to go to this place, to this retreat. And I was just like crying my eyes out, upset, because I felt like I had, you know, lost all this money and I couldn't understand why, because I felt like I was supposed to be at this place and, you know, it had been confirmed to me. And all throughout the day, as I was doing my things, you know, dropping my cat off, I saw lots of messages from the universe. So I was like, everything's going to work out. And then it didn't work out. And I was like, universe, you're lying to me. Like, what happened here? You let me down. Like, I'm supposed to be on this flight. Just crying. And then I managed to get a hold of my coach, who told me like, hey, listen, go home, journal it out, get your fears out, sleep on it. In the morning, reach out to the airline to see what you can do about this. So then that's exactly what I did. Went home devastated, did all the things, went to sleep, woke up in the morning, called the airline. They basically told me to go to the airport and go to some office there. I get to the airport office place. There is no office, it turns out. So then I'm like, where am I supposed to go? So I called them from the airport, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time, so I had to use pay phones. And I was like, hey, you said to come to the airport to see the people at the office to see if I can get a, you know, discounted ticket or something. And there is no office here. So like, what is supposed to happen? And they were like, okay, well, you'll have to call us. We'll have to process the potential discounted ticket over the phone, but you have to wait until like 2 p.m. to see, because that's when the prices will be up and all this other stuff. So then I had to sit at the airport for like 3 hours, and I'm like still, you know, have a lot of fear, because now I'm like, oh my God, now how much is this ticket gonna cost? Because I already paid $1,600 for it. I've already paid over $2,000 for this retreat. And now, like, how much more is this gonna cost me? Because I don't want to spend any more money, because I got rent and all these other things to pay. So I was like just sitting in the airport, journaling out my fears, getting all that stuff out. And finally 2 o'clock rolls around. I call them to see about the prices. And they finally tell me that, you know, based on what the system is saying, it's going to cost me an additional $500 more or less. So I was relieved in a sense, because I was expecting something like 1,000, and I was like, oh Lord, 500 is doable. And on top of that, my original flight had a stopover, and the flight that they were offering me was a direct flight. So I was like, that's even better, because now I don't waste any more time and I get there faster, and I'm going to get there just in time to like start the retreat. So I was like, cool. I gave them my card. And at that time, like, my cards were like maxed out, and I think I barely had like $500 left, and I wasn't sure if I had like just the right amount to like pay for that ticket. Right. And I was like, oh my God, like, I really hope this goes through. Universe, please, if I'm supposed to be there, which I know I'm supposed to because I feel it, make this card go through. So I'm on the line, I'm waiting on the phone, the guy's processing the payment. The call, you know, pay phones, when you put credit, there's a certain amount of time, and then like when you run out of credit, it hangs up on you. Yeah. So I didn't have any more coins on me, and I was like, oh my God, like this call is about to like hang up. The guy hasn't come back to let me know if it was approved or not. And like, what if right when he comes on the phone again, the call like dies or, you know, goes away or whatever, and I have no more coins and all of this other stuff. So I was like, oh God. And then, you know, when I had like 20 seconds left or whatever, he comes back on the line and he's like, okay, Miss Ventura, your payment has been approved. You can go down and check in and get this card, the flight thing and whatever, and board. I was like, cool, awesome. So then I go downstairs and I go to check in, and I'm checking in, And I had my new passport because for Peruvians, we need to have a biometric type of passport to get into the European Union countries. So like I was informed up until that point about that, and I had complied with that. I had gotten the new passport, so I thought I had no issues. But then she was like, "Okay, Miss, where is your travel insurance? And where are your papers to show that you've paid for your reservations in a hotel or something like that?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "I don't know. I didn't know I was supposed to have this stuff." She's like, "Yeah, one of the requirements that they ask for Peruvians is that we have the travel insurance as well as, you know, paid documented things for like our hotels or our stays there so that they know that we're not going to stay illegally. We're not going to overstay." I didn't have any of that because I was planning on arriving in Paris. I was going to be at this retreat place for a few days over the weekend. And then I was going to leave back to Peru from Amsterdam. And I didn't know where I was going to stay in between. Like that was going to be an adventure. And I didn't have any of that booked. And I didn't have the travel insurance. So I was like, okay. She was like, "Well, you can pay for the travel insurance back there. There's a kiosk. You can sign up for that." She's like, "And what you can do for the moment is you can go online to an app and maybe temporarily book one of those places that they don't require you to pay up front. You can just reserve just without paying anything. And you can, you know, screenshot that and try to present that to immigration in Paris. But if they're not convinced, if they don't feel like it's enough evidence to prove that you're just there for a few days and you're going to leave, then they have grounds to like deport you back to Peru. They will probably send you back to Peru. It's up to them." So then I was like freaking out because like, oh my God, now I have to spend more money on this stupid travel insurance. And now I have to like book a place, and I don't have a cell phone. I don't have anything on me to try to like book anything. And what am I going to do? So I just went, I got the insurance. I had enough money for that. And I'm just getting on this plane. Like it was basically up to me. I had to decide. And I was just like scared, but I said like, okay, well, I've already come this far, and you know, I might as well just get on this plane. And if they deport me, well, they'll send me back. But at least I got on the plane. At least I traveled. At least I used, you know, what I paid for on some level, you know, instead of just resigning myself to just quitting and giving up and going home and crying and being depressed about it. So go ahead. You have a question?
No. You followed through.
Yeah, I followed through.
Yeah.
And then, so I got the insurance. I got my ticket. I waited to board. And then, yeah, it was time to board the plane. So I was on the plane and I watched a few movies and things. And then I fell asleep because I was like, okay, it's time to go to sleep. So I woke up maybe like 30, 40 minutes before we landed. And when I woke up, I was like, oh my God, we're about to land. And all of a sudden, like all of this fear overtook me to the point where my legs were shaking. I had never had so much fear, but I was shaking. I was so afraid of being deported. And, you know, for those people watching this video that don't know my story, I was born in Peru. I was raised in the U.S.
Wait.
Long story short there. Yeah.
You were born in Peru. I thought you were Californian. You said
No.
California. I'm just kidding.
No, but I want to move there. I want to move to California. So long story short, yeah, I was raised in the U.S. and to make the story short there, my parents lost their immigration status. They ended up being there illegally documented. When I was 19, immigration showed up at my house and basically was like, hey, you have about a year to get your affairs in order to go back home. So then I had to, you know, come back home. And it was that's a whole story there. New experience there, coming back to a country that I barely remembered. But I came back to Peru. So I have like this karma, these issues with immigration and deportation. And I always have to experience it on some level every time I travel. Like there's always some kind of fear I have to work through in regards to that. And it gets easier because I've released the fear over and over again. But back in those days with the Paris trip, it was still really intense. And I think it just triggered all of that fear of like, oh my God, I'm going to be deported. And I've like thousands of dollars now is gone out the drain. And what's going to happen? And I was just shaking and I was like, get it together, Steph. Journal out your fears. Don't let the fear consume you. And I took my journal. I was like journaling out everything, trying to do what I know as a coach and stuff to process my stuff. And it was time to like get up off the plane. And I go to, you know, through immigration, through customs. And I, you know, the line was like divided in two. And there was like one line here and one line here, and I was on the left hand side. And there were all these different like cubicle type things for the immigration officers. So I was on the left hand side, and I'm looking at the officers, I'm looking at their faces. They all look kind of serious and not happy. And they're like talking to the passengers, like the people that just got off the flights and stuff. They're talking to them and like just interrogating them so much. And I was like, why are they talking to everyone so much? Like, goodness, like what's going on here? I was like, I don't have a good feeling about this. And then all of a sudden I heard right. And then I was like, oh my God, guides, are you telling me to go to the right? Okay, I'm gonna go to the right. So I go to the right to the other line. And then I'm looking directly ahead at the immigration officer right there. And he also looks kind of serious, not very friendly. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, why did my guides tell me to go to the right when this guy looks like even meaner than the other people? And now if I go to the left, I'm gonna look suspicious because I'm like a crab going left, right, and I can't move anymore. But then something in me was like, no, look further right. So I look further right, and there was like another immigration officer there, the last one, and he was like younger and he seemed nicer. And so I was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to be in this line. So like I get in that line, and in front of me there are some like some Chinese tourists or something. And in my mind, I'm already like coming up with a plan because I'm like, okay, Stephanie, listen, French people love it when you speak to them in French. You're gonna have to use your French, and you're gonna have to charm him, and you're just gonna have to like really just get on his best side so that he's just nice to you, and he like stamps your passport and you get in his country. So I was already practicing like what I was gonna say to him to convince him that I wasn't an issue, that he could trust me to come into the country and leave, because I had been to Paris before and all this other stuff. I had like my whole story ready. So the Chinese people like go ahead, they don't speak any English, no French, no nothing. So the officer can't attend them, and the officer kind of finds it a little bit comical that he couldn't communicate with them. So he was kind of like laughing and joking and telling them like, oh, please go over there, they'll see you. He was directing them somewhere else. So then he like calls me, and I'm like, okay, cool, it's time to shine. So I go and I talk to him, and I'm just like speaking to him in French, and I'm like, oh, you know, he's like, oh, he talks to me, he says, bonjour, madame, and I'm like, oh yeah, bonjour, and this and that. And I'm talking to him, and he's like asking me like, why are you here? Like they directly spoke to me in French. It's crazy because I was expecting that, you know, if I'm coming from international, they're going to speak to you in English. But no, he spoke to me directly in French. That's like a French thing. See, they love speaking French. And so I started speaking to him, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm here to attend a retreat. It's going to be at this place, and it's for business and this and that. And he was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, okay, I got to like talk to him some more. So then I got out of my coin purse, like this old metro ticket that I had from the Paris metro. And I was like, excuse me, sir, do you know if I can still use this? Because years ago when I came to Paris, I got these tickets and I still have them, and I don't know if I can still use them today. And he was like, oh, I don't know, you know. And I was like, oh, it's okay. I was just wondering. He's like, oh, your French is so good. And I was like, oh yeah, well, I lived in Belgium and this and that. And I'm telling him all the stories. So like he knows I've lived in Europe. I've been to Europe. I've left Europe. You can let me come back into Europe, please. Let me be here. And he's just like all the time, like not really even looking at me in my eye. He just had my passport open. He had the stamp in his hand. He's listening to me talk. And then he's like, yeah, okay. He's like, okay, have a nice trip. And like not once did he have me like present my travel insurance to him. And when I was in Lima waiting to board the plane to Paris, like all the Peruvians had like folders full of documentation, like police records and the hotel stays and all the different things to show immigration in Paris that they were gonna leave, you know, they were okay to like enter the country. I had nothing except travel insurance, which I got at the last minute. And I was afraid that they were gonna ask me for things I didn't have. And he didn't ask me for any of it, any of it. He just let me go. And I was like, oh my God, universe, you came through. I knew I was supposed to be here. I knew I was gonna make it, even though like all the things were against me. But I just held on to that faith and did my best to like shift out of the fear, because for me, God, the universe's love is not fear. But a lot of times as humans, we allow our egos to get in the way because we're trying to control things, we're trying to see how it's gonna work out and all this other stuff. And that really keeps us from, you know, having the things work out. And that was like a huge learning experience for me that I had. Like I can't even tell you how much that whole experience just changed my life from that moment forward. And even things that I experienced on that trip as well, with learning to like trust and surrender and let go and just let the universal powers that be to handle things for me. But it just completely changed my life to really understand like everything's going to work out when you really have that deep level of faith, trust, and belief, and you just move forward anyway. And so, I could have easily not boarded that trip. I could have easily allowed that lady in the airport in Lima to discourage me from even boarding the flight to begin with, and already putting in my head that I was not going to even get into Paris at all. But I decided to move forward with it. I decided to do what I could to release, fears and doubts along the way, and just held firm to like, I have to be here. This is going to work out somehow. If it doesn't work out, it's okay. It's for a reason, but I know I'm supposed to be here. And it worked out, and I was able to go to Paris and have lots of other crazy, amazing stories experiences as a result of that. So that's my crazy story that I had. And I really want to share that with people, because when you're traveling, you're going to have a lot of things that happen that are out of your control, that you're like, oh, like right now with coronavirus at this time, there's a lot of things out of our control. And we can either buy into things that make us fearful and scared about our future, what's going to happen, or we can hold on to our faith, whatever faith you practice, that inner knowing, that trust with the bigger powers, to be like, no, it's all going to be okay. Like, you're looking out for me. It's all going to work out somehow. Don't know the way, but I'm just going to keep doing my best to move forward in the ways that I can. And it's all going to magically work out. And I'm going to have amazing stories to tell because of this afterwards when I look back on it. So that's my story. Sorry, I can't hear you.
I can sympathize. I can empathize with you. I know the struggle. When I was going to Korea, if my sister hadn't been there with me, I probably would not have boarded that plane, because I wasn't an international traveler, and I had my ticket in hand, and I said, I'm going to board this plane. And they said, I'm sorry, you don't have X, Y, or Z. Can you step to the side? And I said, oh, of course, thinking in my mind that everything was just going to work out. And my sister approached me and she said, what's going on? Why aren't you being processed? And I said, oh, they said I need so-and-so, so-and-so. She said, Larry, you're going to miss your flight. So she said, come here. So she grabbed me and then, brought me to the counter, and she said, you're not going to ignore my brother. And she just went in and da-da-da-da-da. And I got on that flight. And I thought to myself, dang. I'm really, I was green. I didn't know how, be an advocate for myself in that moment. And my sister had plenty of experience with traveling, so she showed me, hey, buddy, you got to get in there. Let these people know you're supposed to be on that flight. Get in there. So yeah, and those people can be intimidating, and you can just, give them the power and make it seem.
I love that.
Give them the power and make it seem like, oh yeah, you know better than I do, and but you have the conviction to say, no, I'm going to see see this through,
Exactly. And this applies, I think, to so many things in life, to health. If someone gives you a negative diagnosis, you don't have to buy into that. I have different beliefs, of course, 100%. I personally believe everything can be healed 100%. Like, that's my belief. I have studied a lot of things over the years, and I just believe this to be true because I've heard crazy stories of people recovering from paralyzation and a bunch of different things, healing broken bones, like in a day or whatever, like all these amazing things. So I truly believe in that. But we always have, the power to either, believe in negative limiting things. We can choose to give our power to that, or we can choose to give our power to what we know is true in our hearts. And so if we know we're supposed to be somewhere, or things are supposed to work out for us,
yes,
in a positive way or whatever, we just have to do our best to hold on to that deep faith and knowing like this is what it is. And I don't care if the external is trying to convince me otherwise. So yeah.
Muchas gracias.
So that's one of my crazy